guys, it's a new year. Yes, I still have my Christmas tree up. Don't judge me. But I got a lot of requests about starting either a YouTube or a podcast. I thought a YouTube would be better because I can actually show you guys a lot of things that I use in my practice, from holistic wellness to spirituality. But before I started talking about holistic wellness and spirituality with a mental disorder, I thought it was important to actually talk about mental disorders. Because in the spiritual community, as well as just in general, mental disorders need to be treated and talked about like we do physical disorders. A lot of times we use mental disorders as adjectives, and we can't do that because all we do is add to the negative stigma that comes with these disorders. Like, for instance, when you throw a temper tantrum or you have a mood swing and you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm bipolar. No, you're not bipolar. You're just throwing a temper tantrum. Or even when you say things like, I'm depressed, and really you're just sad. And so you kind of water down that word for what it actually is, because depression is so much deeper than sadness. And that includes the spiritual community. You hear them say a lot of things like depression is attachment to things and you detach yourself. No, depression is a mental disorder. And that's how we need to talk about it. That's not how we need to direct our attention to it. Because if you understand what depression is, or any mental disorder, you know it's kind of like a switch. And that switch comes on and off at any time, and it can be random times. You can be surrounded by people you love. You can be fulfilling your divine purpose. You can be in the middle of a joke laughing, and then all of a sudden that switch goes off and you start to feel worthless. You start to feel like you might not want to be here anymore. And if we keep watering down that word for sadness, like you lost your job and you're saying, oh, I'm depressed, and then you get a new job and it's like, oh, I beat depression, you're kind of watering that word down. So when people do things like self-harm or commit suicide, it's hard for people to understand, because it's like, oh, I was depressed and I didn't feel that way. That's because that word is being watered down. So even going further, let's talk about dissociation. Dissociation is not spacing out, okay? Even anxiety. All of us get butterflies. That doesn't mean you have social anxiety. That doesn't mean you have generalized anxiety. We have to start saying these things, okay? We have to start speaking on these things. And number one, starting from the public, in the spiritual community, everybody. We need to stop talking about disorders as adjectives. If you do not have a diagnosis for it with a disorder, don't say you have it, okay? Don't pick and choose what traits that you're gonna say makes you this, and especially when they're all negative traits. So, okay, moving forward. In the living room.
Oh, I didn't know where you went, cause if you're in the living room, it kind of sounds like you're in your room, cause you're like right in front of your room, so it sounds like it's coming from your room, but it's actually not.
Okay, give me a kiss. You done eating? You done eating?
Yes.
Okay, get you some juice. But moving forward, when I talk about disorders, I am talking about all disorders. I want to just focus on the main ones that everybody knows about. We can't exclude people with other disorders. If we talk about mental health, we have to talk about it, all of it, not just certain parts, not just the fun parts, because everybody else has this, so it's easier to talk about this because, oh, it's a bigger crowd. No, we can't exclude people. We can't exclude disorders when we talk about mental health. Talk to you guys about starting a spiritual journey with a mental disorder. Things are a little different, obviously, with the mental disorder. So I'm just gonna kind of break down things that I've learned, my tips, how to help, especially when it comes to shadow work. Some things are just not necessarily off limits, but you just have to be careful with it when you have a disorder, especially if you're dealing with PTSD, dissociation, and things like that. So I will see you guys. Make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, and you can connect with me on Instagram. I'll put my link in the description. So I'll see you guys next week.